This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by the good-looking folks at GoDaddy.com. Use our code Linux and save yourself some cash. And welcome to the Linux Action Show, Season 22, Episode 10. My name is Chris.
And my name is Matt.
Hey there, Matt.
Hey!
Welcome back.
I'm back.
It's good to have you here. We have a really packed show. So last week, I asked people to send in their favorite bash scripts.
Ooh, that's going to be some code smashing.
And we got a bunch. In fact, we got so many that what we're going to have today is just a first look at some of the submissions we've gotten. Nice. So that's coming up in today's show. Fun with bash. Nice. We're also going to have a little discussion around GNOME 3 and if it's sort of been put on live support.
Yeah, there's going to be some stuff on that. And we both probably will have varying opinions.
Maybe. And I've seen the chat room debating it for a couple of hours on the live stream. So
if
you ever want to join us live, you can do so. jblive.tv, 10 a.m. Pacific. That's where we have a live chat room and a video stream and an audio stream available. Now, before we get to all of today's shows and the picks, I want to make a little bit of an announcement. Okay. This is the end of the season for Season 22, which is crazy, and which signifies the end of another contiguous 10 blocks of episodes.
That's how it works.
Yeah,
who'd thunk it?
That's the season, Matt. We're really complicated. And you've noticed that Brian isn't here. The Matt's filling in for the B-Man. And as things stand right now, Brian has decided to officially retire from the show. He's got a lot of things he has to focus on. And number one being he needs to focus on generating his own revenue for his family and himself. So he's going to be doing that for, as far as we know, indefinitely. I did ask him if he'd like to come back on and do one more final show. I don't think so at this point in time. However, and this is I'm kind of get into this next, but we're going to make a couple of format adjustments, and I think that format adjustment will sort of give us a window for him to come back on when his schedule opens up and he's available. And I'd love to twist his arm and get him on here for the review episode I want to do for the 2012 predictions episode to see how that turned out.
That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, because
that's going to be cool. That's going to be very cool.
And then we're going to make a new set of predictions then. So. If you want to reach out to Brian, probably one of the best places to contact him is on Google+. He's active there, or on his blog over at lunduke.com. Now, I did say, so starting with Season 23, a couple of new things will be coming to the show. One of them is we're going to have a refreshed new look.
Cool.
Yeah. So everybody's been kind of wondering when that's going to come.
You were talking about new graphics and some new ziggy-zaggies. That's going to be cool.
All the other shows basically have had updated looks, but Linux Action Show being the big show, I wanted to wait till the time was right. I think it's time to kind of liven things up and bring a new look to the big show, so we'll be doing that next season. I'm working on that right now. Another thing, the show's going to also start focusing a little more on bringing interviews on with people in the open source movement, movers and shakers, people who are out there doing things that I think our audience would be interested in. Now, I'll be honest, one of the reasons we really haven't done this in the past is I'm just a really busy guy and it takes a lot of time to set up interviews. So I'm going to be kind of new at this. Not that I'm new at doing interviews. In fact, I love doing interviews. That was one of the things I really enjoyed about doing my Stoked show is it really became a great interview show.
I have a thought on that. What if some of the people we want to interview, perhaps open source project leaders, for instance, maybe there's some watching this show right now. Maybe we should, that'd be
a great way to
email.
Let's start off with that. I've got a few people lined up, but feel free to email me, chris@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or you can use the contact submission form and just submit it for the Linux Action
Let's get a queue going.
Yeah, let's start getting some people on, having chats and discussing what's going on, as well as all the other regular content that we always do. So that'll be really cool. And from time to time, we'll probably bring Alan on to talk about a few cool things that he's working on. And I think it's going to be great, and that's all going to be starting next week in Season 23.
Awesome.
So we have a ton of stuff to get to today, Matt. So why don't we start with a few of our weekly picks. First up, it's the Runs Linux this week. This supercomputer with 147,000 cores is a German-made SUSE supercomputers. Let me see if I got this right. 147,456 cores.
That is ridiculous. I mean, what would you actually use something like that for? I mean, we're talking about like to file your taxes with. I mean, what's the deal?
Man, maybe. It is becoming one of the fastest supercomputers in Europe. It's built by IBM, runs SUSE Linux Enterprise. Maybe it's to help with all the Euro crisis stuff. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah, it could be the fix to all your problems.
Actually, one of the things they talk about that's really great is the supercomputer is installed in somewhat close proximity to the Germany offices for SUSE.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So they're able to
that's actually very interesting.
They're able to bring some of the team over, and now it is ranked. It is ranked in one of the top 25 supercomputers in the world, and it's very, very cool. So check it out. It has a total, by the way, a total computing power of 3 petaflops.
That's just good grief.
Are you ready for this, Matt? 324 terabytes of memory. 324 terabytes of RAM.
Yeah.
That would probably that would be a real
I want
mean,
one.
That'd be a mean machine.
I want one. I want one now.
Now, great news for all of you GoDaddy fans out there. Guess what? I promise this would happen, folks. Danica's back. Danica's back, and she's got a great offer. Of course, she could maybe. There we go.
No, none of that.
Not only did I say Danica would be back, but I said she'd be back with a great offer, and boy, do they deliver. If you would like to support our sponsor who supports this show every single week for years now, get 20% off your entire order.
Nice.
20%, right?
Nice.
I know, 20% off.
A solid discount.
Now it's a wild wackadoo code. You guys ready for this? Because remember, 20% off is a complicated matter. So here's the code. It's GO20 off 6. GO20 off 6. You get 20% off your entire order. You getting some .coms? Sure. You getting some .us's? Sure. You getting some hosting? Why not? You doing some renewals? Yeah, you could use that. So use that code GO20 off 6 to save 20% off your entire order. Welcome Danica Patrick back to the GoDaddy.com homepage.
And I'm willing to bet you probably you'll find that in the show notes.
Yeah, there's a good chance.
You can grab the link there.
So thank you to GoDaddy for sponsoring this week's episode of the Linux Action Show.
Nice.
And welcome back, Danica. It was great chatting with you last night. She texts me every Saturday night.
Really?
Every Saturday night. Oh, she's up. She watches live. She's watching right now.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Unless she's racing. The only time she doesn't watch live is when she's racing.
Well, I hope she's not,
Well, she does.
That's a little scary.
She does stream on her Nexus S. She streams the show.
But is she hands-free?
I think so. I think she.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm picturing someone texting driving a race car.
Oh, no.
Okay, because I was a little concerned there for everyone.
No, I always tell her whenever she's driving and racing, I say, Danica, no texting and racing.
Fair enough.
I say that every time.
Okay, so I can live with that.
All right, Matt. Now, this week, I got some real hands-on with this fun app that I've used on and off for probably 6 months called Waze for Android. It's also available for iOS.
Okay.
And it is a social GPS traffic and gas and really also a cop trap warning application.
Ooh, I like that already.
The way it works is everybody that runs Waze anonymously submits their traffic data back to the Waze server. So you become a client and an information point when you're running Waze. And then as you're driving down the road, if you hit some really crappy traffic, you can mark some bad traffic, or if you see a cop, or if you see an accident, or if and you can give different levels of traffic. You can even take a picture of it. And then what starts to happen is you start to get like these Waze social credit points. So like you take a picture of a thing, you get 6 points. And then somebody can thank you and you'll get another 3 points.
Well, I have a question. So I'm driving down the road and I see, a speed trap. Do I press a button, type something in?
Yeah, they have these like there's this really really easy to use kind of like big button interface that comes up.
That's about my speed right there.
Traffic jam, police, accident, and you just hit which one it is, or a speeding camera, something like that. And it has some chat features too. I don't.
That's a little frightening, but I dig the big buttons. I think that's cool. If I can,
the big buttons are nice, and it gives you also a really good map overview of the road ahead. It gives you color indicators, what traffic looks like. So as we were on a little bit of a road trip this last weekend, I was able to see, you know what, boy, traffic going through Seattle really sucks. You also see how long somebody reported it, so you know if maybe the information is a little out of date. And you can see the ranking of the people reporting the traffic incident and see if they've been a really active Waze user, so you know if you can trust them. The kind of like the eBay rating system for sellers.
And are you able to determine that by glancing at it, or do you have to dive deeper into the app?
No. Each person as they drive along has like little different icons that represent.
Okay, so you know then. Okay,
you can kind of see it in their screenshot, but you know, like somebody might have a crown on, so you know they're. And this sounds kind of silly, but what's neat about it is because first of all, it's a pretty popular app, and it's available for multiple platforms. A lot of people are using it, so you get traffic data on side streets that you would never normally get data on, like all kinds of really neat locations.
That's pretty cool. And you said it had GPS as well.
Yep. It doesn't do nav, but it'll give you like points of interest around you and stuff like that.
Okay.
And of course, it shows your road position. So check it out. It's WAZE Waze, and it's linked in the show notes.
And that is free.
It is free.
That is free. Free is good.
I got another app pick for you, and this one's for the Linux desktop, Matt. And I'm surprised it's never been a pick on the big show. It's called Radio Tray, and it's really meant for GNOME, and also it works under Unity. And it is exactly what it sounds like. It's a little radio application that goes in your system tray. And I've got it loaded right here, as you can see. And you see it's running up here in my top tray,
it looks
right
like
by
a
my
little
clock.
wireless. It
kind of almost does look more like a wireless signal than it does radio. But,
I mean, to me anyway. Yeah.
It's super neat though. It's low resources. It comes preloaded with a ton of great online radio stations that are really great. But to add your own, it's super easy. You just go into preferences. You say configure radios, and you can add the existing categories, or you can just add it right here in the root. So say you wanted to add the new Jupiter radio station, you just put in Jupiter radio, right?
Sure.
And maybe you're on a low connection, so I'll do Jupiter radio, and we'll do low quality. So I'll just put http://jblive.am, right?
And so for any audio listeners, basically you're just typing in that information as far as the
it's a
name.
2 dialog box. You just put it there. You say what folder you want it to go into.
Oh, that's nice.
In this case, I'm going to say the root, and so I did JB Live AM for the 64-bit stream. If I wanted the 128K, I'd do FM,
which for voice is overkill.
Yeah. So there you go. So now I have Jupiter Radio and Jupiter Radio LQ. Now,
I love it.
If I hit Jupiter Radio, what's really neat now is it connects to it. It'll say in the and see it works too with the built-in notification system as the station changes information. Now, because we're live right now, it says the track is unknown because it's a live broadcast.
Makes sense.
But when it's music or pre-recorded podcast playing, it actually gives you all of the ID3 metadata right there in the menu. So you get the track name, the artist information that's streaming on our radio network.
I can get used to that.
Yeah,
that's nice.
I'm really
liking the fact that it's kind of I don't know, an alternative to the kind of a shoutcast kind of experience.
Well, and you could totally do this in VLC or Totem or any other app you want. The nice thing about this is it's put right up here in your tray.
I would rather have it in my tray. Actually.
And you get quick little controls. And if you just if you need to focus, you just go up here and it's got to just turn on, turn off. It's super quick to use.
Well, it seems lightweight. Yeah. I could try that. Yeah, I really like how that's set up. That's cool.
I will put a link to Radio Tray in the chat room if you're watching live. Go check out Radio Tray. I really like it. And do me a favor, put in the jblive.fm or AM streams. And this is really cool if you are a viewer in France and you are subscribed to free.fr, a French ISP who has 5.18 million subscribers.
Whoa.
Good news, if you go on the little interface they give you on your cable box for internet radio streams, guess what's featured on the TVs now?
Wow.
Jupiter Broadcasting
check
Radio.
That out. That's cool.
So if you do free.fr as your ISP in France, go check it out. It's got a really cool bubbly animation while the radio plays too. So that's that'll just come in all of those set-top boxes.
Kind of has a Beer's Tasty feel to it.
Yeah, that'd be great. We often will play old Beer's Tasties on.
But that's really cool though. I love the effects and I love that that's featured.
And it
awesome.
Just comes right on those TVs now, so that's cool. Maybe we'll get some more of that. Feel free, anybody out there who's a TV manufacturer,
make it
have at it. All right, now before we get out of the pick section, we do have our distro pick of the week.
All right,
and this was submitted by a viewer named Matt, not this Matt,
not this one.
I'm going to say Matt's last name is Pilly. Pilly?
Okay.
Matt Pilly? I'm not sure. But he recommended that we cover RASB BMC.
Oh, yes.
An XBMC distribution just for the Raspberry Pi that comes totally pre-set up. And it has the optimization so it can play HD video nice and butter smooth.
Oh,
it has a bunch of plugins that come pre-set up. It's already got the database set up with the accounts, all you need.
There it is.
And he even included a little demo. So here, if you're watching the video version.
Oh, sweet.
Look at that. There's the Raspberry Pi. He's got the Ethernet version.
Gotta get one of these.
And he's got USB hooked up to it. And that USB is going to a remote receiver, an IR blaster. So he's able to control the Raspberry Pi with a standard IR remote. And
this looks so much better than the setup I'm doing now with a laptop. Same thing with remote, but I have it's like VGA'd into my It's horrible.
This is HDMI out, right? Because that's how the Pi feeds the sound and video.
God, this is great.
When you're watching a movie and it's like this quiet, tense scene, the last thing you want to hear is the of your fans, right?
That is true. And even with the laptop, you can get that.
And that's what I love about the appeal of the Raspberry Pi.
Oh, yeah. It's like a Roku box. It's basically, it's pretty much solid state, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's XBMC, in this distro. So go check it out. It's RASP BMC. We'll have a link to that.
Love it.
In the show notes. All right, Matt.
All right.
Well, let's do the news.
So, what's new in the news?
All right, Matt, this week there was a few stories that really kicked up the dust online. First of all, a new friend of the Linux community, Gabe Newell from Valve.
Oh,
right,
yes.
of course. Everybody loves Valve these days. he was being interviewed by All Things D, an offshoot of the Wall Street Journal. And the topic of Windows 8 came up. Now, I'm sure everybody's heard the story because it's got a ton of traction.
Awesome.
So Gabe went on to say, when he was talking with All Things D, that one thing holding back Linux is video game support. The big problem that is holding Linux is games. People don't realize how critical games are driving consumer purchasing behavior, Newell said. And we've always kind of speculated this, but it's interesting to hear somebody who's really kind of a titan in the industry to say this.
They're qualified.
Yeah, exactly. They have the exactly.
Yeah, kind of obviously. But yeah.
We want to make it as easy as possible for the 2,500 games on Steam to run on Linux as well. It's a hedging strategy. And this is exactly what I was speculating. It's a hedging strategy. And here's what he goes on to say, and this is the 1-2 punch. I think Windows 8 is a catastrophe for everyone in the PC space. I think we'll lose some of the top-tier PC/OEMs who will exit the market. I think margins will be destroyed for a bunch of people. If that's true, then it will be good to have alternatives to hedge against this eventuality.
Well, there's a couple things wrong with that. First of all, I would love to see that happen. Don't get me wrong, but if you look to companies like Dell and some of the other ones, their support has been pretty shaky. So Microsoft has this nasty habit of lining everybody's pocket. So I don't know.
That's true.
You know,
Microsoft has paid their way.
Yeah,
I mean, look what they're doing with Windows Phone. They're paying their way out of a hole right now.
Oh yeah, they do it all the time.
Here's the thing: is I think what's interesting about this is these are some pretty. Valve really depends on the Windows platform right now. They do. Let's be honest. I mean, sure, they have a Mac,
butter,
they have a Mac client, but they probably make 95% of all of their sales money for the Windows platform.
At least.
So to come out against your platform provider is kind of a risky move.
But I believe there was actually a reason why they came out swinging, because of the fact that they were feeling that Windows 8 wasn't really going to provide them with the type of experience.
Well, and he thinks Microsoft's making a bad bet altogether. He says, we think touch is short term. He went on to say, the mouse and keyboard were stable for 25 years, but I think touch will be stable for 10. Post-touch will be stable for really a long time, longer than 25 years. And he goes on to talk about how it could be anything from using your mind to your tongue to control the computer.
Well, and I think he's now. I will agree with him on the fact that I think touch is limited. I don't know. I wouldn't go so far as to try and give it a rough time frame.
It sucks for gaming. For most like first-person shooters now, for like things like Fruit Ninja and Angry Birds, it works.
It works okay, but if you're looking at tablet versus the desktop touch situations too, that's another thing. There's this big expectation that you're going to start seeing more touch on your monitors and stuff like that. And honestly, it's not practical. Greasy fingerprints where I'm trying to work, that's not working for me. I'll forgive it on my phone, I'll forgive it on my tablet, but I'm not going to do that on my computer. I'm sorry.
So let's back up.
Nah.
I think the other thing that Gabe might be sort of discounting is the whole Vista effect.
True. Yeah.
See, when Vista came out, everybody just stuck with XP.
They did.
And why won't everybody just stick with Windows 7? I mean, people don't want to buy new hardware. People don't. I mean, the average Windows user doesn't want to buy new hardware. Doesn't want to have to buy new software. They don't want to have to go through an upgrade.
That's true. Although I would also say that if someone's buying a new computer anyway, that's probably where the bulk of their adoption is going to happen. And if they finally would fire whoever's been doing their marketing for the past 5 years and actually get someone with a clue, because they have a real big opening right now with Apple's latest commercials, let me tell you. Well, those are pretty bad. So they have an opportunity to sell them on this is why you care. They could do it. I don't think they will, but they could.
And why not? Why is Linux going to be the replacement for Windows 8 and not the Mac?
Honestly, and this comes down to the various companies out there that are supporting various distributions, getting out there and getting the word out now. This would be a good time to do that because your existing hardware could support these distributions versus getting into the Windows 8.
If you go Mac, if you go Mac, you got to go totally new hardware.
You got to go totally Mac.
Very expensive.
Yeah. And with Windows 8, who knows? Really. I mean,
but with a Linux distro, you just take your existing S7 box.
Yeah, exactly.
And you move it. And maybe that's not even October Windows 8 ships, right? Maybe that's 3-4 years down the line when Windows 7 is starting to look long in the tooth. A lot of web apps, a lot of things are web enabled that weren't web enabled before, and a Linux distribution is more and more of a probable choice.
Could be.
I think the other thing that's really pushing Gabe is the fact that Windows 8 is going to include its own default app store, which is essentially a competitor to Steam.
I would agree with that.
But also the Mac does that, and also the original target distro of theirs, Ubuntu, also has an app store.
That's a very good point. That is a very good point. But in order for Linux to get any adoption, as he's predicting, honestly, he needs to step up himself and make sure that their website is saying, hey, you need to check this out. He needs to contribute to that as well. It can't just be us.
Well, and to that end, some good news coming via Steam. We've heard of Left 4 Dead 2. Also, Serious Sam 3 is coming to Linux via Steam. They're already working on Serious Sam 3. BFE is currently in development for Linux and should launch sometime this year. The Linux version will launch with all of the content up to date with the PC and Mac versions.
Could be interesting.
It will feature Steamworks integration, including achievements and the whole shebang, which means Steam save features, group functionality, all of the social features built into Steam will work in Serious Sam 3 on Linux. So
that's exciting.
This is moving forward. Yeah. Also, what was very interesting is Blizzard came out.
Oh, now we're getting personal.
Rob Pardo from Blizzard came out, and he also agreed with Gabe. And he took to Twitter and he said, "Nice interview with Gabe." And then he quotes Gabe's, "I think Windows 8 is a catastrophe for everyone in the PC space," and he says it's also not awesome for Blizzard either.
Okay, so now we went from one major gaming company stating this to now we have basically agreement between two.
Blizzard and Valve.
I mean, these are the two heavyweights.
These are big guys. Of course, now it'd be interesting to have like EA come out, get the other guys on board.
EA is kind of I'm gonna lean more with these guys. I think they're more early adopter friendly. So cool.
Now we just had the whole Blizzard wine snafu where supposedly wine users were getting blocked. I don't know if I buy the legitimacy of that because when I loaded Diablo 3 on my Linux box and I used Play on Linux to do it, the Play on Linux installer script was written by developers at Blizzard.
Oh,
so that seems like Blizzard's maybe has a very early toe in the water there.
Could be,
maybe.
Could be. Yeah, I think it's possible. And anyone that was experiencing any errors, there is the very real potential possibility it was just an error. I don't think we should jump ship and start blaming everybody immediately. Give them a chance to correct it.
Right now. While we're still talking about Microsoft, this is interesting. So we just had the whole financial quarter report week pass, and Microsoft. And we heard about Microsoft. They shared the results where they had their first quarter where they lost money.
Big money.
Yeah. One of the other details that came out that really hasn't been talked about a lot is Microsoft also admits that they're really kind of risking the farm on this tablet strategy. Here's the quote that I think is actually irrelevant. They say, our Surface devices, this is coming from Microsoft directly, our Surface devices will compete with products made by our OEM partners, which may affect their commitment to our platform. We are witnessing the beginning of the real slide here.
They're so stupid.
They know.
I mean, it's like I just want to scream. I mean, I don't know.
They're kind of saying screw HP, screw Dell, and you've had Dell come out and say we're focusing on the enterprise. And we have a story here about Dell, why Dell is selling Linux again, and Dell has the Ultrabook they're shipping, and Dell has these Linux desktops these enterprise Linux desktops they're shipping. And
who's making these? I mean, how blind, stupid can you be? I can't even fathom. But the cool thing is that aside, now is the time for all the distribution, marketing teams and all the community members that are trying to promote this. Get it out there now, right on their coattails. Frankly, this is a great opportunity.
Oh, I know this. I thought as a community when we passed the Vista window to leap into more market share, I thought Linux was screwed.
I thought it was delayed. I wouldn't say screwed. Well, I'd say there was a pause. Microsoft gives you lots of openings.
In retrospect, Matt, you're absolutely right. But I thought, Windows 7 is a pretty well received Windows product. If you like Windows, you really like Windows 7. And it's okay. It's had,
if you like, I was gonna say
they've sold 40 million copies.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it feels like a lipstick XP. But
exactly, that's what it is. Yeah. But it's it's still done really well. And I thought, boy, if they just iterate on that.
Yeah, right.
They're really going to have a lock
reinvent the wheel. Right.
If they iterate on Windows 7 and just keep improving it, they're really going to have a lock on the market. But they didn't. No. They didn't do that. And the window is coming again, and it's sort of like we're in a much better position now.
Oh yeah.
For example,
if we take action, that's the piece that we're as a community missing time and time.
But let me ask you this:
we got to do it.
What if you could boil down the major mistakes that Microsoft's making with Windows 8 and Surface?
Sure.
Is they're making a really big bet that their traditional desktop mouse and keyboard market wants to go touch.
Yeah, and it's human nature. It's not going to happen. I'm a mouse and keyboard guy. I would tolerate limited voice interaction, but outside of that...
And here we are. Nah. Here we are, what, 3-4 years, really 5 years into the mainstream touch revolution, and it's still not appropriate for all tests. No. But, Matt, let me ask you this. Isn't this the same exact mistake that GNOME 3 made.
It is. It is. Although I think that it goes deeper with GNOME 3. You know, and you want to get into that now?
Yeah, let's do it because this came up. Guadec
Okay.
is going on, or just wrapped up, I think. But one of the contributors to the GNOME project authored this very, very poignant blog post called Staring into the Abyss. And a lot of our chat room has seen this. A lot of our community has seen this, and they've been debating this.
Stuff.
He's not attending Guadec because he says it's just not worth it. It's just an echo chamber. Number one, he says core developers are leaving GNOME development.
And that's a problem.
That is a problem. He says GNOME is understaffed. He says it's hard to explain, but GNOME has GTK has one person working full time on it. The author of this post.
Okay.
Glib doesn't even have that. And Evolution is in a similar situation. The entire Evolution email client.
Oh, and they had problems to begin with. Yeah, that's not good.
And then he goes on to link to statistics about other projects like GStreamer and Network Manager around GNOME that are also suffering from a ton of developer drain. He goes on to also say that the fact that if you look at who actually contributes to the GNOME project, it's Red Hat. It's actually a Red Hat project. And he says GNOME suffers from a massive bus factor of 1, meaning if a group of people got hit by a bus, the project's dead.
Right. No, I understand what they're saying. Well,
he goes on to say GNOME has no goals.
Yeah, I actually these days anyway, I definitely agree with that. I think they did it one time up till GNOME 2.
He goes on to say GNOME is losing market share and mind share. Distros are switching away from GNOME. Previous supporters of GNOME are scaling back their investment like corporate investors. Most important desktop applications have not made the switch to GNOME 3, kind of like GIMP and Inkscape and Firefox.
Right.
Even if some of them have work in there.
Well, so here's the thing, because at this point I've used GNOME 3 as well as other items based on it. I've not noticed anything missing yet, and maybe this we haven't felt the effect of it quite just yet. I mean that's possible.
Well, I would disagree. I mean, I think
I haven't personally.
I think GNOME 3, even now, several revs into it, feels like an incomplete desktop still. And
it does.
And I think that's because of that.
But I'm also looking at the projects that it could, in fact, affect over the long term. And, of course, the desktop itself, I mean, but is it usable? Yes. Is it my preferred desktop? Not even remotely. But it is usable. It's just it's really taken away from what GNOME 2 accomplished.
And I think it's important to differentiate. You have the GNOME shell. Which is the UI and the desktop environment that sits on top of GNOME 3 and the GTK3 technology.
That like Unity would use and things of that sort.
And those are great. And although we haven't seen the adoption there that probably it should see now, and I think that's also an indicator that there's some struggling. I wrote down my thoughts because I was thinking about this while there was a pretty good discussion thread going.
Oh, on Reddit, yes.
And so because I already wrote it down, I wanted to touch some of it because it helped me put into perspective actually how much of a backward slide I think GNOME 3 is. I honestly don't care about GNOME 3 shell.
Right.
The backend stuff is fine, but I really thought GNOME 2's basic approach to how a desktop worked was really great. They had flavors of a simple philosophy combined with a recognition that they had a power user base, which really and we go back to this, like, there's these mythical new users that are supposedly flocking to GNOME, but you have an existing base that needs to be representative.
That's
okay.
true.
This really put it in perspective. I think GNOME 2 was great. It just needed updated, right? It needed a
refresh, and I think that's what they try to do. With
and do you remember how great GNOME 2 was at these iterative releases where every single version, it was that slow and steady GNOME evolution, and you would have KDE 4, and it was just a train wreck at the time.
Right.
And GNOME 2 was just sitting there, such a nice, polished desktop. GNOME 2...
Yeah, they provided an experience you could rely on.
It was so good that the reason Ubuntu became a popular distribution, they originally based their 6-month cycle around every quality release of GNOME because GNOME was so good, there was a demand out there in a user base to get those fresh GNOME releases. So Mark Shuttleworth came out and said, we're going to do a distro that has a default GNOME desktop that ships every 6 months with a new GNOME release with great default packages. And that is what made Ubuntu the largest Linux distribution. That's how good GNOME 2 was.
That's true.
And now that very distribution is switched away from GNOME.
Yes, but then again, can you blame them? I've been using Unity for quite a while, and honestly, while I absolutely hated it to begin with, I really dig it now. I mean, I still have other desktops that I use, but I can tolerate it. It's fine.
I really right now am finding, I floated to KDE for a while.
Oh no,
I keep getting pulled to XFCE when I get annoyed with Unity, but I keep going back into Unity and just living there because I really like Unity's future path. There was just recently a really great mock-up on future possible Unity Dash concepts I thought was amazing. There's a lot of effort and now momentum behind Ubuntu and Unity, which I think is interesting.
That's true.
And I just have never been able to get it up for GNOME 3 desktop. And I am not a Mr. Hates Change. I love change and coming on this show and talking about change. That's why I started this show.
Yeah, no, that's true.
You know, and so now we're looking at it and I don't like GNOME 3, and I'm Mr. Likes Change.
But GNOME 3 is not GNOME, the GNOME project itself, it's not dead yet. I mean, it's still on live support. There is an opportunity here to basically a fork in the road where they can either go left or right with this. They can either decide to say to hell with it and let it go, or they can say, wow, this clearly isn't working. Maybe we need to dial back a little bit, or here's a wild thought, actually get some community input and find out what needs to happen to improve it.
They have been notoriously bad about working with community. I mean, that's why Mint forked and made Cinnamon and things like that. And Unity. I mean, that's really the original. I mean, do you remember Unity started to come because Canonical was having conversations with the GNOME project about how the way notification should be done, and there was such disagreement there that it just sort of started the split, and Canonical realized that they needed to be able to drive the desktop in their own direction. Just a couple of closing thoughts.
Okay.
I continue to have zero interest in GNOME 3 Desktop. I don't even have interest in GNOME 3 Desktop's future plans, unless those future plans include making it more like GNOME 2 and not requiring I install half a dozen extensions to make it usable.
I would go so far as to say I have more interest in the other related applications like Evolution and things like that.
Sure.
I more focus on that, but I think for the general health of the entire GNOME ecosystem, I would like to see it succeed, because you don't necessarily want to see something like that drop off. I think that
definitely. And there's a lot of people that love its simple interface. It's clean. It gets out of your way. And there is a certain use case scenario where I think GNOME 3 could be really great. And different desktops for different folks.
True.
And that's just
true.
how it.
And some people do, oddly enough, like it, and that's fine.
I'm not trying to say GNOME 3 is this train wreck catastrophe, but I think what I am trying to say is I think they bet on the wrong interface. They bet for this mythical touchscreen Linux running interface that would run GNOME Shell on top of it that's never materialized.
Yeah. Well, and if anything, Unity is going to beat them to it anyway. So it doesn't.
And Unity is doing it in a way that still makes it completely functional for a desktop and for a touch interface, or for a freaking TV.
True.
And a phone in some cases. And here's the last part is they made the same wrong bet that Microsoft is now making.
Oh, that's for sure. There's no question of that.
Okay, at this point in time, how could any tablet come out that would run GNOME Shell that would justify dumping the mass majority of your desktop user base? Because that tablet's not going to be able to compete with the Nexus 7 or the iPad. The iPad just sold 17 million or something like that in one quarter.
Yeah,
it's never going to have the same share of flourishing desktop will have.
Too far off. I mean, because coming back to the whole thing is that there's an opportunity for them to adapt or die. I mean, that's really the brass tacks of it. They will have to make that choice.
Yeah,
and so that's where I leave it at is adapt or die. That's really what it is. If they continue to go the rate they're going and they continue to build on this turd pile, then it's it's not going to work.
Here's the bad news. Here's the bad news. And I don't mean I really you guys. I mean I freaking love GNOME. I mean
I do too.
I'm not. And this is just that's why I tried out Mate. That's why I've tried out Cinnamon.
Yeah. Well, that's why I haven't written them off.
That's why XFCE is now the closest thing to an original GNOME experience, right? So Guadec was just going down this week while this blog post had happened, so people were it was kind of in the air at Guadec. And here's what some of the announcements are coming out of Guadec at the GNOME Developer Conference. It's been called this week that GNOME 4.0 will be released on March of 2014, alongside GNOME OS. They're going to make GNOME OS.
They're not ready. Again, I'm a big fan of the future of this project. I want it to succeed, but 3, if it's reflecting 3 in any way, shape, or form, not ready for that. It's, we have something that's not working, so now we're going to build an operating.
Buckle up, I got more for you. So GNOME OS is going to be this complete GNOME experience. Don't think of it as a distro. And they actually talked about this last year, but nothing ever happened. It's going to be this complete experience from top to bottom with GNOME. It's going to come with an installer. Now, they were willing to talk about some of the bad things about the project. Right. You ready for these bad things, Matt?
That would be nice to hear. Yeah.
Here we go. The bad things for GNOME is this is what they pointed out at Guadec. They still have too much focus on the traditional desktop. They lack direction and vision. They lack corporate involvement, fragmentation, and freeloaders, limited resources, and bad developer story, and bad brain drain, losing users.
Yeah, so basically what that means is that the marketers are now apparently grabbing control of something that's not being controlled at all, and they are not only running the show, but they basically are dictating the direction of the project now. So that's really awesome, guys.
Just look at the cognizant dissidents right here in this one sentence. They pointed out that they focus too much on the traditional desktop. But then later in the sentence, as they say they need to fix that, they talk about how they're losing users and losing developers.
It's like they can't make that connection.
If you keep moving in this direction and people are bailing from your ship, and you say, well, our problem is we haven't moved enough in that direction.
Yeah, no, and I'm telling you, it's a marketing mindset that's running the show now, and that's bad. And they're not very good at it, obviously. So
I don't know if this is a joke. This literally might be a joke.
I hope so.
In 2005, Gnome announced the 10x10 plan. 10% of the desktop market in 10 years or something like that.
I remember that.
This year, they announced the 20x20 plan. Gnome intends to reach 20% of desktop market share by 2020.
Okay, let me back up for a second. Have they
but remember, they're focusing on the desktop.
Yeah, they're focusing on the desktop too much. So let's refresh this. So have they reached 10%? I've not seen data to support that.
No, what you do is remember it was supposed to be by 2011. I think they're supposed to hit. Yeah.
So we haven't reached our goal.
You just overshoot.
Yeah. So basically, they're extending fail. And again, I'm a big supporter of the guy that wrote the blog post, and it's feeling frustrated with. I'm a big supporter of Gnome. But the markety dudes, and I call them markety dudes, the little markety dudes, that
might have been a joke.
I mean,
maybe that was a joke.
I don't think it is. I've seen this type before. I don't think it is.
They've already started Hackfest sessions.
I think there's truth in it. So
they've already started Hackfest sessions on the Gnome OS. Yeah. Now remember, Ubuntu said they want to get to be on 5% of PCs next year shipping. That was Ubuntu's goal. But Gnome wants to be on 20% of the desktops. I don't know how they're going to do that without the most popular distro.
Yeah, it's like, and not only that, notice the differential in numbers there, and the reach, and all the other stuff going with it. Hate them or love them, they are the most popular.
And this seems like it could be an opportunity for Fedora to make like a premium GNOME experience, maybe.
It could.
Anyway, so look forward to GNOME 4 and GNOME OS, as well as 20% market share. However, they are going to be focusing more on those tablets. For all of you that are running GNOME 3 on your tablets, you're going to be much happier with how the interface works. When you're nice.
Two of you.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think the only way GNOME's ever going to get on a tablet in the next, say, 5 years, and I'm not saying down the road we're not going to have just a mass market of tablets like there are desktop PCs now, but that's not right around the corner.
No.
Their best option would be if somebody can find a way to root the Surface and install Linux on a Surface tablet.
Yeah. At least then it's useful.
Yeah, like on an x86 one or something. Anyways, there you go. That's the update on GNOME. I've also got a link to the to the slide presentation of the GNOME conference where they talk about the good things and the bad things. And
yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely worth checking out. So,
all right, well, let's talk about something our cousins across the OS pond are doing, and that's the FreeBSD project. And you all are familiar with the FreeNAS project that sits on top of FreeBSD. Well, they've just released a new one, and this sounds really, really sweet. I'm really tempted to give this FreeNAS a try, even though it's not a Linux box. Check it out, Matt. They've added awesome ZFS support that is now integrated into the GUI. So if you're using their handy dandy nice FreeNAS front end, you've got all of the ZFS commands available to you. Nice. They've got built-in DLNA and torrent support and DAP support and iTunes streaming support. Right. They've got a new revamped GUI, and they've introduced a new technology that is really badass. It doesn't have hardware adoption yet, and we just talked about it in last week's TechSnap, but it's the SCSI protocol over USB.
And so that's interesting.
What they're working on now is a USB. It requires a hardware controller and device and a hardware controller on the motherboard. And Asus is now shipping motherboards that do this. Is instead of using this block protocol over USB, it uses their traditional SCSI protocol over a USB wire. And the controllers will be able to so if you have the SCSI support on both ends, Bob's your uncle, and it's like way faster transfer speeds.
So that's basically your benefit.
SCSI can do, not only can SCSI do parallel communications, but it can do out of order communications. So whereas USB it's single channel and every block has to be exactly in the right order, and if something doesn't arrive in order, it has to resend. Whereas SCSI can queue up and get things out of order and then proceed once it receives the remaining bits.
That's cool. No, I like that.
It's very fast.
Yeah.
So to have that built into FreeNAS is great because as devices start to have this support, you'll be able to just turn it on.
I like it.
It also has some cool iSCSI tricks it can do and things like that. So FreeNAS 8.2. If you're looking for a nice little home-built
Oh, yeah.
file server. This is great. OpenFiler is Linux-based. It's another alternative. I happen to like FreeNAS a little bit.
Yeah, I've had better experience with it.
All right, Matt, good news.
Good.
Linux kernel 3.5 has been released.
All right.
And I don't always spotlight every kernel release. But the
Well,
3.5
it gets a little dry after a while,
Yeah.
but there are some things to mention.
There
here.
are.
Yeah.
So, Phronix had a good write-up on a couple of the items. One thing that I think people are going to like that have ATI graphics cards, the 6000 series video cards will now have audio support over HDMI.
Oh, nice.
So the home theater geeks will
I
be able
have
to
one of
enjoy
those,
that.
so yeah, that's awesome.
Here's what I really liked, though. Some nice, although what Phronix classifies as minor, but some really nice ButterFS improvements. ButterFS is really coming along. Also, that USB, SCSI over USB protocol, also making an appearance in Linux kernel 3.5.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
All right.
And if you're a
Cool.
fan of Steve Gibson and you've been hearing him preach the issues of buffer bloat, the Linux kernel now includes CO Del Q management, which will solve buffer bloat issues, which is really great for Linux firewalls and routers. But so one of the ButterFS improvements is this release includes a fairly large changes that make ButterFS much more friendly to memory reclaims and lowers latencies quite a bit for synchronous IOs.
That's cool.
When we saw some recent benchmarks, these two things were kind of making ButterFS underperform in most conditions.
Yeah, it was holding it back. Sure.
So now I want to see another round of benchmarks. ButterFS.
Well, it would be interesting to compare them with the old benchmarks,
Yeah.
for sure, and especially with a little.
Give ZFS a run for its money.
Yeah.
All right, Matt.
All right.
The last news story before we go have some fun with Bash, and this is hasn't been really spread around very much because it happened at the Black Hat conference, and they haven't even been put up on the website yet. But Backtrack, everyone's favorite vulnerability and penetration testing tool, it's one of the things we've got to review on this show soon.
Yeah, we need to.
Has had 5R3 released. A new version's out. I got a link to it in the show notes. It's not even up on their website yet. It was a special spin they made for Black Hat, and now you can get it online.
Oh, sweet.
And
All
it
right.
also includes the VMware image. If you've never ran this distro's tools against one of your home systems.
It's a real eye opener. And then that's putting it very mildly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hello.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to see what kind of mayhem you can have.
Yeah.
So, all right, Matt. Well, that's all the news for this week. Why don't we have a little fun with Bash this week?
Sounds like a plan to me. Let's do it.
This has turned out really great. So I put a call out at the end of last week's episode asking for people to send in some of their favorite Bash scripts. And I must have struck a nerve. We got some great submissions. So we're going to cover some of them today.
All right.
I'm going to show you a cool program that I use to catch my podcast. It's based all around a really nice Bash script.
Oh, this one's cool.
And then at the end of the segment, we're going to have a little poll on some upcoming Bash scripting coverage that you guys might want to see. Before we get going into all of that, I think we should probably remember that these segments are sponsored by the awesome folks over at System76, who have equipped us with one of their rocking Wild Dog performance PCs. We have it right here in the studio. You would know, though, because it's nice and silent. So thank you to System76 for supporting these segments and supporting the Linux Action Show. You guys got to just go check out what they're doing because these are some awesome guys and gals. And I should be honest, there are some gals there,
absolutely.
too. Yeah, who really just support Linux in and out. I mean, this is their business, is making machines that work great with Linux. Sometimes, I don't know if people want to draw this parallel, but it's very much like another vendor out there who puts fruit on their machines, and they have a very integrated experience where it works very closely with the OS.
Well, that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to make Ubuntu accessible to everybody, not just folks that want to take a made-for-Windows PC and install Ubuntu on it. So that's awesome.
Something that's actually, they do a little research and development around this Linux.
You betcha.
Support.
Yeah,
so,
they do a lot of research and development.
Now, Bash scripting is something that I got my start with as my system admin job kind of demanded it. Because one of the great things that Bash scripting will let you do is automate repetitive tasks. I mean, that's I think where a lot of people get into it is, I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay. All right.
I have had this client, on and off, has this machine that batch processes a lot of data through a various bunch of different scripts that run on the back end. And we couldn't quite figure out what script was hanging up this machine every single night, just completely locking it up. So I wrote a script. And what this script does is it ran every 5 minutes thanks to the cron daemon, and it would do a top 3 times in a loop to capture all of the processes sorted by CPU usage and output that out to a file. So that way when the machine hung, we'd have a snapshot of top.
Oh, nice.
And
Okay.
this was a really nice way to
That's
go because
cool.
we had these junior sysadmins, right? And they would
Right.
just SSH it in the machine after they rebooted it, cat the file, and say, "Oh, okay, it was this thing that was causing it to
Right,
hang
so
out."
they have something to look through.
And that
Okay.
took me 3 minutes. It was like, "Oh,
Wow.
okay, well here I'll do this really quick for you guys." And that's just something that you wouldn't be able to just sit there and keep hitting the up arrow, enter, up arrow,
Oh
enter,
yeah,
up arrow,
no.
enter.
Manually be a nightmare.
And really, like a lot of the fundamentals underneath the hood are done by scripting. It might not always be Bash, but a lot of times it is. Like the whole startup process is often kicked off by a series of Bash scripts. Bash is the born-again shell, and it's sort of the universal standard. So if you're brand new to Bash scripting, Matt and I have linked an advanced how-to guide in the show notes. Go check that out. It's from the documentation project, and it's really cool.
That's fantastic. Well, and if you're coming from more of a Windows background and you're new to Linux, I've always kind of compared it to batch files. I mean, there's some parallels. I mean, there's obviously some severe
There's
differences.
more advanced, though. It's almost
more
closer now to PowerShell.
That's true.
PowerShell is kind of trying to catch up with some of the more advanced capabilities that scripting
But the
has.
actions that you're trying to perform, you're trying to do, X to Y or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That's kind of the same purpose. So.
Now, before we get into my favorite script that I want to talk about today, we did have some cool ones sent in to us either through the subreddit or through email, and this one came in from Jed, and links to slexy.org, where you guys can go get the raw versions of these, are all in the show notes. This is really cool. So this is Jed's script, and I like Jed has a couple of different things. One is a very sysadmin type thing he needed done, and another is like anybody that has a digital camera could use this script.
Oh, okay.
This script checks for SSH agent, and if it isn't running, it fires it up. And he has this little thing that runs in the background to make sure that he can always have his SSH keys on the ready. But here's the script that he did that I think a lot of people would get value out of. Sort images by date script. Just a simple bash script that like looks at your camera export folder and then looks at the time and date stamp and then renames them all so that way they alphabetically sort based on their time and date.
So inside the folder, what you're saying is that those images will then be automatically sorted. So when you actually look at it through your desktop environment.
And I have become more and more of a fan of using just my file manager to organize my photos because I was big into F-Spot, and now So
I never was.
I haven't been able. I feel like a jaded man. So anything that helps you manage my photo collection, and this is a great example of like going through and having to relabel files by hand, automate that thing. So
that's awesome.
Got a link to.
I like the script, and for me, that's a simplified way of doing it. I prefer just to keep it simple.
Now this one was really interesting. I noticed a few of the submitters used GitHub to host this. Like it was actually almost the majority of people used GitHub. This is really cool. This is submitted by Leon Boo, or Boo, I'm not sure. This is a really nice script for tracking your most recent directories and quickly jumping between them. And he's got the link in there. You guys catch that one. Here's one more we'll cover before I get to mine. Okay. A Bash wallpaper changer.
Oh,
yeah. So this came in from the Baron, 1834, and he laments how since GNOME 2, he's missed a handy applet to do this for him. So he upped a script to his GitHub that pulls down images from online, and he just recently added DeviantArt because there's actually been some interest in the Reddit, and people have even made some suggestion code on this script. So now you're actually seeing it kind of take a life of its own. So he's actually keeping this script updated now on his GitHub.
It's basically become a project. It sounds like that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Nice.
All right, so one more we get to before I get to one of my favorites is. This one was sent in by Farhad, and this is sort of a playoff of mine, although mine's kind of taking the next step. Everybody, probably at one point or other, has heard of Bash Potter if you're subscribing to podcasts on Linux. And Farhad here has some modifications of his own to Bash Potter that, because it's just a Bash script, so he opened up and made some modifications.
Sure.
And he has it running as a cron job every day at 4 a.m., followed by a script, then uploads the new episodes to his Android phone.
Oh, nice.
Which starts an FTP server via Tasker 1 minute before the cron job starts. So I have nothing else than pressing play on my way to work. How awesome is that? He's in Australia, and he put links to how he does it. So go check that out in the show notes. Now,
so that's totally hands-off. I love it. Yeah, that's cool.
That is really a very neat system. And the one I'm going to show doesn't do the copying to the Android phone. You actually have to come up with that solution yourself. But I want to talk about Podgit, the Bash-based podcast catching software.
Nice. All right.
That even though there's no GUI, there's no clicking, it's all scripting,
The whole thing's from a shell.
It's a whole thing, but it's really easy to add your podcast feeds that you like and then have it automatically subscribe and download them for you. And it even has a neat little twist that I'll tell you at the end.
All right, cool.
Let's check it out here. This is Podget, and you can just get it over at podget.sourceforge.net, or it's like in almost every distro's repo, which is
I'm going to probably get it from the repo, the web page. I'm not in love with the web page so much, so
it's not pretty.
Great app though. But,
so once you install it, Podkit's available on the command line, and everything you need to do in Podkit is configured through a series of files in a .podget directory that goes in your home directory. The two files that you really want to look at are Podget TRC and serverless. So here, I'll take a look at Podget TRC, okay?
All right.
So Podget TRC is, or Podget RC is sort of like an rc.local file for a Linux box. You go in here and you set things like, I want to download 1 of the most recent episodes or 5 of the most recent episodes. I want you to clean up after 2 episodes. No shows should stay longer than 7 days on here. I want a maximum cap of my download bandwidth is this. And then this very last option down here at the bottom of the screen is the one that really sold me on this. Always generate a playlist file.
Ooh, that's nice.
It's really nice. So so check this out. So one more file you have to edit, but this really is, you guys, is not that hard. So then you edit this other file called serverlist, and in there is where you set what your feeds are. So you see I have 3 feeds. I set their category and then the show name. Okay,
that's pretty simple. Just one after another.
I got Coda Radio in there. I got Unfilter, and I have the faux show. And I just said, I'm just going to get their MP3 feeds, but it could be the video feeds as well.
Yeah.
Now, what they recommend you do, although you could do it, I particularly run it manually, but you could cron this command as well. But you just, once you have those files filled out, and they come with defaults, so it's really you just change the defaults. You just run the podget command, or again, cron it. It goes through, checks the feeds to see if there's any new files.
Oh, nice.
So it goes to see, is there a new Coda Radio? Is there a new Unfilter? Is there a new faux show? And then if there is, it downloads them to a pod folder in your home directory. Once you have it downloaded, you see it creates categories. So I made a dev category for Coda Radio. I made a news category for Unfilter, and it sorts the podcast into their category folders.
And you made those changes within the text file itself.
Yeah, within the Podget RC file.
Okay.
And it generates this very handy M3U file that I can now just drop into VLC, and it has all of the new episodes for the day. So you don't even have to worry about it.
And so you're not having to jump from show to show. It's already done for you in the playlist itself.
It's like, here's all of the podcasts I downloaded today. Here's your playlist for it.
I like that.
And you could have something like this saved to a Dropbox.
You could.
And then you could access that Dropbox on your mobile device.
That would work.
Yeah.
That would definitely work. Well, and one thing I think you mentioned as well is, now this is to the local user. This isn't system-wide. This is like each individual user can have their own favorites or their own settings.
Yeah, it all runs out of config files in your home directory.
Nice.
And you throw it in your cron if you want to run automatically.
That's very cool.
But this is, in my opinion, the reason why I wanted to pick this is because Podget is a perfect example of a really powerful version of bash scripting where it really has almost become an application.
Oh, I think so. And not only that, but you can expand on it. If you need to, such as, decide more in depth where you want things to do or how you want it to operate. You have a little more control than you might with the limited options of a GUI application.
So let's open it up.
That's pretty cool.
So here is the actual quote unquote source for Podget.
Okay.
See, it's at the top of the bash script. Like all good bash scripts, it starts with hash bang bin bash. Right there. It's right there. It's at the top. It's this is the bash
pretty
script
straightforward.
with a description of what's going on, some comments, and then you can go through this. And all this guy did is just spend a ton of time creating this really incredible, inclusive bash script. And what's great about bash scripting is the more you learn about how Linux commands can interoperate with each other, because Linux and Unix are a collection of tiny commands that all work together. Once you learn how to build these chains together of commands, you can do some incredible bash scripts, and your scripting just gets better and better, and it makes you better on the command line, and it makes you better scripting too. And it's so cool because you can just open this up and just see how this guy did this.
It looks like it's well organized, so you can learn step by step what's happening, and it's commented out. Yeah, it's commented out well.
Yep.
There's even a little bit of documentation at the top.
So this is very cool. It's obviously an advanced version of a bash.
Oh yeah,
but,
no, it's very, very
I was very
powerful,
impressed by that. All right, now we do have one more that I wanted to kind of go over that was submitted that made it in this batch.
Okay.
Don't worry if your bash script didn't make it in here. We've got more ideas coming up. But this was like we're like, oh wow, there's such a big response. We've got to get to some of these.
It was completely overwhelming. It was awesome.
So this one came from Melroy, and it's Call of Duty 4 game server script. Okay. You know the Call of Duty 4 server on Linux, and he says this could be modified to work with any game. But if you're running a Linux server running game servers, just tweak it to whatever game you have. He says it gets placed in etc.init.d, and that way you run your update rc.d, whatever command it is for your distro to get it started. And it goes through it. It starts up the Call of Duty server. It checks to see if it's crashed. It does an automatic restart. And it's this way so we can do this headless Call of Duty server. He doesn't have to log in SSH, go into the Call of Duty server directory, / start the Call of Duty server.
So not only is it, taking care of these tasks that need to happen, but it's almost like an extra set of hands because you can run this script and walk away.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay.
So if you've got something like that, if you're maybe working on with a Minecraft server or something like that, see if you could take his script. We have it posted up there.
No monitors needed. I love that. That's awesome.
I know, exactly.
Totally headless. That's great.
So now, what Matt and I are going to do, we'll have it coming in an upcoming episode, is we've got a lot of good response, and we don't know which ones would be appropriate to show on the show just as kind of like a showcase, or which ones we actually should dive into, kind of like we did with Podgit today.
Right.
So Matt had a great idea.
I decided that I think the community should have some voice in this. I think you guys, not us, should decide what we're featuring in this, and we need to actually have a vote to do so.
So we don't have it yet. So keep sending your bash scripts to Linux Action Show, Linux Action Show at JupiterBroadcasting.com, or what's really awesome is when you submit into the subreddit and people start commenting on them, and I can also see the voting. Yeah, but in the next episode or so, we'll have a poll that you guys can vote on for which bash scripts we should feature in the next segment, and then we'll show you the guts of that and how it works.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly what you guys want. You will be in control of what we feature.
All right. Well, that's the Linux Action Show's look at having fun with bash scripts. And that brings us to the end of this week's show. Thanks, Matt, for sitting in and joining me. You'll probably be joining me for a little while with the recent change-up of things. And I know everyone, you probably have lots of thoughts, but we're going to have a pretty great season next week. So
we're going to mix it up.
We're going to mix it up, and I want to hear what you think as we go. Now, before we wrap this show up, I want to read an email that we got.
Okay.
Speaking of bash scripts that we just covered, and we got more we're going to do with bash scripts. In fact, I was negligent. We were going to create a poll, and I forgot all about this.
Oh, yeah.
We'll do that maybe next week. We'll have a poll, and you think we should put everybody's bash... We'll put a couple of bash scripts up for vote, see what people like the most, and then we'll do that. We'll cover that bash script on the show.
Cool.
That'll be cool. Now, why don't we get to this email? Speaking of bash scripts, it's related. It comes from, I think, Cirrus, C-I-R-R-U-S.
Yeah, that looks right.
He's super serious. He says, enclosed is one of my favorite scripts, screencast.sh. I'm not the author, so please give props to him. I just find this, and I just said, send me your favorite bash script. I didn't say it had to be yours. Yeah. He said, I find this to be the best possible way to capture my screen in Linux, and I think it's a marvelous script. It's just a tiny text file, and he put the link, and you guys can go grab it if you want. So this is a little bash script that does some screen capture in the background.
Oh,
and I thought that was pretty neat, and
cool.
I wanted to, so you can go check that out. We have a link in the show notes to get that bash script if you want to do a screen capture that way. Now, if you want to screen capture a video game, there's a new piece of software that just hit the alpha stage. There's PPAs available for Ubuntu, and there's TarGZs for other distros out there, and it's called Gamecaster, and it's really neat. So I want to show you. I want to show this to you guys. Gamecaster has a really simple interface, but what's really neat is it actually hooks into OpenGL. So it only works with OpenGL accelerated applications.
So this isn't like Kazam or some of the other ones.
It's not actually grabbing the screen. It's actually doing it at an OpenGL level.
So you're going to get better quality when you're capturing your games.
Yes, and less overhead on the actual capture.
Sure.
And the other side effect was so here if you're watching the video version, I was playing Braid on my Ubuntu machine last night, recording this with Gamecaster.
It came out really nice.
I noticed no delay, no
tearing.
No, it was really nice. And here's the crazy part: is Braid was actually super screwing up on my display. The screen was flashing like this, and the top and bottom menus were flashing, and my mouse kept getting all screwed up. But the capture came out perfect because it's actually hooking in at the OpenGL level, and it's free. It is an alpha. It's very limited.
Wow.
It records in an uncompressed format. So
WebM, I believe, right?
Even a few minutes of gameplay, like I played here, this was a 2 gig file.
Wow! Oh, so it must be WebM. Okay, yeah.
You set the bit rate. Yeah. You set the resolutions based on the game resolution size. So if you make it whatever window size is, that's what it captures. It actually records to an uncompressed format.
Okay, so then you can drop that into a video editing app and do whatever you want.
You totally could. Sure. Yeah, you totally could. It has a built-in encode option, and you just basically hit encode, and you say encode, and what it does is it just encodes it right to WebM, and you tell it what bit rate to encode it at.
Oh, I like that.
And WebM takes a while, but as you see,
it does. But you can if you're careful, you can end up with really great video using it.
This picture, I'm not sure how well it'll come out in the recorded version, but the picture here in studio is
pristine.
It's 720p, beautiful.
Yeah.
So check it out. That's Gamecaster. faster. I'll have a link to that in the show notes.
I love it.
Or, of course, you could always grab Sirius's bash script if you want to do it kind of an old school way.
Yeah.
So keep sending your emails and your bash scripts to linuxactionshow@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or even better, submit them in the linuxactionshow.reddit.com subreddit, so that way the other members in the community can not only check them out, vote them up, give some suggestions, and things like that.
Definitely.
Hey, Matt, before we get out of here, I wanted to give a mention to the folks out there about a post you did called Rethinking Linux Hardware, Upgrade or Buy New.
Yes.
Sort of relevant to today's conversation.
It is relevant, yes.
And I thought maybe people might like to know that you write about Linux outside the show.
Yep.
And you have a great write-up over here at datamation.com, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes if you'd like to check out Matt's thoughts.
And you can usually find me there usually every week at datamation.com /open source.
Yep, or find him on Google+. He's
Yep.
plus Matt Hartley, or he's twitter.com/Matt Hartley.
I am all over the place.
Nice and easy.
Nice and easy.
And you can find me on Twitter. I'm twitter.com/ChrisLAS, or Chris Fisher on Google+. Also, I don't say this too often, but don't forget you can follow the Jupiter Broadcasting Network on Google+, and that's where you'll get notifications when we go live and new episodes are available for download, or maybe if something's been delayed, those kinds of announcements. We put it there on the Jupiter Broadcasting Google+ page.
It's a must follow. Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Very nice. Now, of course, you can also join us live Sundays, 10 a.m. Pacific, over at jblive.tv. I was going to say Tuesday for some reason.
On Tuesdays. We're
Not Tuesday. No. By the way, we're doing a show on Sundays and Tuesdays now, Matt.
What?
No.
What?
No, I kid. And you get to join our chat room and give us your thoughts live as we do this. Plus, we like to chat and hang out a little bit between the segments, too. So there you have it, Matt. That not only is the end of this week's episode, but that wraps up season 22 of the Linux Action Show. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode of The Big Show. We'll see you right back here next week.
bread and butter.
Oh, gotta loosen up the face. Cast iron pans and bacon are like two great things that go together. And take that same grease, you grease up the pan, put bacon in there. Bob's your uncle.
Nice.
Some of the best bacon you'll ever have, Matt.